And welcome back, sports fans. We have a very, very special episode for you here, both for the fourth and long podcast and for Coach Hess's Sports Corner. We have a very special AFLW preview show. And ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by a very special guest from the Coat Hanger podcast out of Sydney, Miss Tracy Kick. Tracy, so wonderful for you to join us.
Thanks, Donnie. Great to be here.
Awesome, awesome. And as per usual, for anybody that's listened to the Coach Hess's Sports Corner podcast, we have my co-host, Mr. Brad Croston. Brad, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Donnie. Trying to stay warm in the frigid, cold environment that is Des Moines, Iowa, like you know, Donnie. Tracy, I don't know if you keep up with weather here, but it's going to be – I went ahead and calculated this. The high temperature on Thursday here in Des Moines is supposed to be negative 14 Celsius. So it's going to be lovely weather here in Des Moines, but we're staying warm and we're getting ready for some footy.
Yeah, so there was some record snowfalls yesterday in the US.
Yep. In a few places, yes, especially. Thankfully not here. Only 3 or 4 centimeters here. So it wasn't too bad. Nothing that we haven't seen before. But I think everybody that is watching and listening, they are here for the footy. We are here for the AFLW. Footy is back and the ladies get to kick us off. But unfortunately, Tracy, I think you'll say it. I mean, it's hit. Unfortunately, the COVID, as Brad and I had chatted in our last episode, COVID again strikes again.
It does strike again, and it looks like it's going to be fairly disruptive, Donnie. Just recently, out of the news out of Victoria, there are 4 clubs hit with COVID positive cases, and at least 1 captain out probably for the weekend. I don't know if there'll be any effect on the fixture, but that's probably wait and see. Certainly changes the landscape a bit in terms of, any team favourites, because we don't know what players are in, out, or testing positive. So going to be interesting.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Unfortunately, COVID continues to be an issue, and unfortunately, with the ladies, we don't have the luxury of hubbing them. So I'm hoping that we can get everything going and everything back up and norming and have a normal round 1, because last year was fun enough trying to go with fixture changes and everything that in both the women's and the men's. So Brad, I mean, this is the first time that you and I have sit here and talked AFLW on our podcast, and anybody that listens to us knows we are footy heads. We listen, we watch, we care about footy so much. How excited are you for this upcoming season, and who's kind of your dark horse when it comes to it for who you're going to be watching this season?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I love footy. I've loved being able to fall in love with this sport and really immerse myself in it, in the culture, and meet different people from both from the US and in Australia in this case. But it's very interesting, and I've been able to get a couple of new people on board and try to get them introduced to footy as well. So I'm excited to watch this both as a fan with a little bit of a more in-depth mind and be able to help introduce people to the game as well. And then as a dark horse that you've been talking about, as you can see on the fourth and long here, I got my Sydney Swans beanie on. I'm an unabashed Sydney Swans fan. We're not in the league yet, but we do have the highest membership total in AFLW so far without even playing a game, which is something I'm very proud of. But I've been kind of keeping track of Collingwood's AFLW team ever since they started up. I mean, they've been really, really solid. They started off as a young core, but they've really expanded into a more all-around solid team, and they're really coming of age right now. And they're really looking as a potential dark horse to win the flag this year. I think they're going to be a team to watch out for. And I think that, especially if you take a look at Sarah Black's top 30 player list that she's been putting out on the AFLW media, Collingwood has 5 in the top 30, assuming that Bree Davy, the only one who hasn't gotten released yet as the likely number 1, that would mean 5 in the top 30. And you have several key players in your list, let's take a look at it. We've got Ruby Slicer at 19. You got Bree Davy in the midfield at number 1. You got Chloe Malloy up top at number 12. I mean, you've got players in several areas of the field on this list. And when you look at that list and you've got key players in the back, you got great players in the middle and great players up top, and with the additions that they've brought in, such as Sabrina Frederick, I mean, I'm really excited to see how Collingwood does this year. I think they're going to be a really tough team to beat.
And Tracy, who's the one team that you look at this year? Again, we'll put it out there. We are all Sydney Swan supporters. Unfortunately, our club is not there, so we have the luxury of sitting there and watching it from the outside. Who's your team that you're looking at going, I really want to watch this team this year?
Yeah, look, I've got to say that as well as being an AFLW Foundation member at the Swans, I'm also a Brisbane Lions fan, and back-to-back premierships is certainly on the cards. My dad was a foundation member of the Brisbane Lions men's team, so I've got a long history there. But the team to watch for me is the Western Bulldogs. I think that they snubbled a couple of players, one from GWS Giants, who's a real standout, as Al Bennett. And I think that they were maturing as the season went on, quite a young listed team, but, with the solid players like Ali Blackburn. So I think that for me, the Western Bulldogs are one to watch. My pick for the flag is still the Lions. But the Lions, I think, really came to the fore and just have such all-round talent, so they don't rely on their stars so much. They have some great stars and some exciting people like Justine Hodder in the forward line was amazing last year. One of the women I coach, Phoebe Monaghan, is joined from the Tigers to the Lions to fill up the space in the back line, so I can't wait to see her play. But yeah, for me, the dark horse Western Bulldogs.
See, and for me, I'm going to throw in, it's not a flag contender, but it's a team that I think could be sneaky good and might sneak into the playoffs, but they've taken a little bit of a hit, and that's the Richmond Tigers. I loved the way they played footy last year. I think they were a progressing team. They got better and better as the season went on. I think Ellie McKenzie really kind of warmed up to AFL footy as the season went on and got better and better and better. They're going to miss her. Unfortunately, she's out early in the year, which I think is going to be a massive loss for the Tigers, but I still think they've got a ton of talent still there. They've got the Hosking twins. They're really, really young, talented team that I think is going to surprise some people. And then another team I keep an eye on just because they've got so many great players, and that's North Melbourne has so many great players. It's such a talented list. They just keep falling short. They're another team that if they can get on a run at the right time, they can definitely contend for a flag for sure. So we talk about flag contenders a lot, but I'm one of those. The season is always fun. So just really quickly looking at it, what are some of your matchups this year that you're looking at, especially early, say rounds 1 through 3, some of the matchups that you're kind of like, I can't wait to watch this game?
Yeah, I think for me, you got to take a look at Sunday. You got to look at Adelaide versus Brisbane, a rematch of the grand final. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, round 1. And then I think, as we kind of talked about with COVID, I think the fixture is definitely going to be fluid, but it's also going to be really fun to get to watch Freo and West Coast and Western Derby round 1. I think that's going to be really fun to get that right off the bat. And then, of course, they're going to have to play in Victoria for God only knows how long. So just seeing how this fixture fluxes and flexes games in and out of certain states with the border restrictions and all that, it'll be interesting to see. But I think for me, Adelaide, Brisbane, and Freo West Coast, those are the two that I'm really looking forward to in the round 1.
Yeah, for me, Brad, I very agree with that because the grand final rematch, of course, is as a result of COVID because Brisbane was due to play the West Coast Eagles in Perth, but Perth has locked everybody out. So that is definitely a highlight. I think the other one of real interest is on Saturday when the Bulldogs take on Melbourne. Melbourne is still predicted to be one of the top teams, and as per our discussion, I think the Bulldogs, it'll be interesting to see how they shape up there. And I don't know, how round 2 will change necessarily, but again, I think the game between North and the Crows will be a really interesting one. That's in Adelaide at this stage. There's some kind of what I would expect to be a few uneven matchups in those first couple of rounds, but that's where you start to get those surprise packages. Yeah.
Yeah, I think another team that we haven't talked about much yet is Melbourne. I think that the addition of Taylor Harris and how she's going to flex into that team is going to be very interesting, fitting in with Daisy Pearson and the likes of the other players on that team. I mean, I think that me and Donnie, we talked about that a little bit off camera. I think that that's a team to really look out for to potentially cause a few ripples throughout the league.
Melbourne is the team that honestly I look at. Their off season, they're going for it. I mean, there's no reason. It is absolutely undeniable that they have brought in, they want to win a flag this year, plain and simple. They have brought in everything that they can to make them better. And I didn't want to say them early because I don't really consider them a dark horse. I really consider them, I mean, Adelaide, Brisbane, Melbourne, honestly, right there, those three right now, it's hard to argue those are not three of the best. Frio's there. We'll have to see how things go with them, especially being West and WA teams and with the WA borders. I'm a little worried that if they have to spend significant amount of time out of WA, that's going to affect them because they play better at home. It's hard to argue when Freo is at home. Freo is a very, very good team. When they're on the road, sometimes they can get a tiny bit sketchy. I agree. I think as long as the rounds don't change, the game I'm really looking forward to is going to be that round 2 matchup between North and Adelaide, because there's a ton of talent in that game on both sides of the footy. Absolutely classic. And unfortunately, I kind of agree with you, Tracy. There are way too many matchups I see that could get ugly early. I'm also fascinated on Carlton. Carlton is another team that I don't know what I'm getting this year.
Yeah,
Maddie Prismarcus is an absolute gun, but she was kind of down last year. I think a lot of teams tagged her and a lot of teams they basically took her out of the game, and it affected her. I mean, when she gets suspended earlier in the year because of some of the issues that she had with the taggers, is she going to have that same problem this year? So we'll definitely have to see, like that game in round 3, again, granted that this fixture stays the same, their game against the Bulldogs could be crucial for them early in the year. I also like this matchup. Again, my little team to keep an eye on, Richmond versus Freo that week at home in round 3 as well. I think could be an absolute cracking game of footy. Just so many matchups. Again, I hate, the only bad part about some of the news coming out is that it's hard to predict how the ladder's going to go. So we'll go with it. Again, it's not easy. Going off right now, again, this is off paper. We don't know how injuries are going to go. We don't know how the season's going to go. We don't know how the fixture is going to change. Right now, as we speak, looking at it, who are the teams that you see in the finals, and who are the teams that you think might just fall short?
Yeah, for me, go ahead, Tracy.
Go for it, Brad.
All right, I'm gonna go with Adelaide, Brisbane, Collingwood, North, then Melbourne, and Western Bulldogs. I think that right now, I think those 6 for me are kind of the established teams that have really shown it before, and they're kind of like the ones that you're going to keep picking them until they give you reason to not to. And of course, like you said, Donnie, we don't know how injuries are going to go forth, but I think that right now, as things stand, I think that those are my 6 to make the finals.
Yeah, I got Lions, Crows, Melbourne, Bulldogs, Collingwood, Rio, maybe. I think Freo will miss Sabrina Duffy, who's inactive, and losing Gooch to West Coast will be interesting, but they've still got stability across our line. So depending on how the lockout affects them in terms of where they end up being relocated. But yeah, they're my 6.
Awesome. And then my six kind of in no set order is Melbourne, Adelaide, North, Freo, the Pies, and Brisbane. I think the Western Bulldogs and Carlton just fall short. I think the strength of that top 6 is going to be difficult. I think Carlton and Western are going to put some scares into a few teams. And I think this could kind of come down to percentages. Like, I'm almost fascinated to see come round 10, is it going to be where a team's got to put up 20, 30 extra points to get in because of percentage? Because that's how competitive this could be. There's a lot of really good footy teams and some teams that I think people are going to look down on. GWS, Richmond, Geelong. It is going to be interesting to see those teams there. How do they respond? Because I think the middle of the pack is going to tell us who makes it and who doesn't. So I'm very, very fascinated by this season. There's just so many teams. Like, I don't know how St. Kilda is going to be. How is St. Kilda respond this year? There's every single team I can sit here and I can see a positive, I can see a negative for in some way or t'other. So it's going to be an exciting season, and I'm really looking forward to it. So again, we've got our finals right now as we speak. Again, we don't know injuries, we don't know that. Who do you think is going to be hoisting the flag at the end of the season this year? Brad, why don't you go first?
Man, this is tough. My heart says Collingwood, just because I've really started to like the list that they've got. But I think Adelaide is really going to be stewing over last year, not quite getting over the line. And I think that they've got a bunch of players who are really raring to get one more premiership in. And I think that the Crows are going to be very, very tough to beat this year. So I'm gonna go Adelaide and Collingwood in a grand final, and Adelaide gets the job done.
Yeah, well, Brad, yeah, I'm going to go Brisbane and Collingwood, I think, in the grand final. I think that Brisbane will be full of confidence, and so many young players were coming into their fore last year. If they come out with the confidence and don't get hit with any injuries, but everybody will be after them. So I agree. It'll be interesting to see how Sabrina Frederick goes in the Collingwood side and whether she has more impact up forward, because 5 years ago, I was coaching at GWS and we could not shut her down. But, now, she just hasn't had the form that she had back in those days when she was at the Lions. So it'd be really interesting if she starts kicking goals and having an impact. I think the Collingwood lineup will just be so bolstered by that.
I think that the combo of Malloy and Frederick up top, being able to kind of lessen the load on Chloe Malloy, because I think at times last year it really came down to Chloe Malloy and just Chloe Malloy. But I think that the dual threat tandem of those two up top could be really dangerous. I think for me, though, I think it's all about Britt Benicci and Bree Davy staying healthy in the midfield. I think if those two can stay healthy and can get through the entire season unscathed, then Collingwood is going to be very, very tough to beat, because I think for me, their midfield is among one of the best in the competition, no doubt.
Well, and I think Collingwood's forwards go as their midfield does. If Bree Davy, if Steph Kiochi and their midfield is giving supply to Chloe Malloy and Sabrina Frederick, it could be incredibly difficult to stop Collingwood. Like they have that tall, hard to stop marking full forward and a quick elite small forward. So that's a deadly combination, especially with only with the smaller numbers on the field. So it'll be definitely, like I said, how Collingwood goes, I think is how their midfield goes. If their midfield dominates like they have been, they're going to be incredibly difficult to stop now that they have that big full forward to give Chloe Malloy some help. I don't know. I hate going with the obvious favorite. I really do, because I'm one of those that sometimes those are the ones that they catch you. But I like Melbourne. I love the way Melbourne played last year. I think they got hot at the right time. I think they added something that they didn't have, and it's a little bit more of a dangerous target up front. Again, Taylor Harris is another one that I think, like Frederick, she needs supply to be able to be as dominant as she is. And I think with that midfield and the abilities of Melbourne, then I think that she's going to get a little more supply at Melbourne than she did at Carlton. So I'm very bullish on Melbourne, but there's part of me that I like North too. I think North is kind of this team that everybody has kind of pushed off of because Adelaide has been so dominant. Brisbane won last year. And Melbourne's got all the hype because of what they brought in. That North has that ability to be the sleeper of the favorites that I think North and Melbourne are the two teams that I look at this year, but Collingwood intrigues me a lot. I think the Frederick addition was absolutely fantastic. And I agree with you, Tracy. I think Brisbane is going to come in with a ton of confidence this year. My only worry with them is they lost a lot of experience to retirement. How do they replace that? That'd be the biggest question for me, is can they replace that? Because it's hard to replace the knowledge of those two of the players that they lost due to retirement. Can the young players step in? They've got a ton of talent. I mean, there's no doubt you don't win a flag without having talent. But can they replace what they lost? That's my biggest question. So I'm gonna tip Melbourne here for the flag, but I have like North like them at 1 and North at like 1A, because I love North's talent. And I think North is a team that they could sneakily get there. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm a team guy. I've always has been. I love the team, but I don't think anybody could do a preview episode without going, who's your player of the year? Who's your best and fairest? Who's your favorite that you think could be raising that best and fair, have that best and fairest medal around their neck after the season?
I kind of alluded to it in the last bit, but Britt Benicci at Collingwood, I mean, she was just an absolute tank last year. I mean, she was the jack of all trades last year. She was helping out midfield. She was getting forward. I think that if she can dominate the ball like she did last year and help supply Malloy and Frederick up top, I think that that Britt Benicci could be a real shout, as could Bree Davy, possibly going back to back as well.
Yeah, Brad, agree. Both real contenders. I probably go. I love Monique Conti. If she gets it depends how Richmond play. And I guess it's pretty hard if you to get those votes if your team isn't winning as well. So she's an unbelievable contributor at Richmond. But I think for me, I think Bree Davy or Jasmine Garner, I think. Two solid, experienced players who, if they have the sort of season they had last year, could definitely take out the best and fairest.
Yeah, and for me, it's hard to argue. Bree Davy is such a dominant player. The biggest question I see is, will her numbers dip a little bit because they're going to be inexperienced at the ruck position? Last year, they had one of their more experienced ruck positions. So will her numbers change a little bit? I love Monconti. I think she's an absolute gun. I think she's a fantastic footy player. She's so calm with the footy. I absolutely love her, but I agree. I think Richmond's issue will be not winning as many games as some of the top teams. And unfortunately, I think the better your team does, the better you have a chance of winning the whole thing. I like Turbo out in Frio. Absolutely love her. Her intensity, her tackle pressure is fantastic. I absolutely love that. I think we get a second tie between Turbo and Bree Davy. I know it's weird, but I think we're going to do it again because they're just both so good. And they're both on teams that I think are going to play really well. I think they're going to win a lot of footy games, and I think they're going to be in the votes. Very easy. And I think the sneaky one, I agree with you, Jazzy Garner at Melbourne at North, I think is that one. If they have the season, I think they can. She's going to be there too. So who knows? Maybe we see a three-way tie. Who knows? It's not going to be easy. There's not as many rounds, so it's harder to get votes that way. So I'm very, very fascinated by that. Just an incredible thing. And I don't know, normally we would do tipping. We would end our episode going through round one, going through the games. I think we should do that, but I'm really worried that these games are going to go. So let's, again, there's a ton of information we don't know. So people that are listening, don't fully go on this. Round one tips will go as if they were going to go normally. So we'll go right off the bat. We will start with ladies first, Tracy. First game of the day will be St. Kilda versus Richmond. Who do you like? Who do you got in this one?
Yeah, this is really interesting because it's out at Frankston, which is about an hour out of Melbourne. And the first game's traditionally been Carlton and Collingwood. I'm going to go Richmond all the way for this one. I think that they will settle in. They'll have the Hosking twins. There's a great new player come in from the VFLW who I coached here in Sydney called Megan Keeley, mature recruit, 27-year-old. She's going to have an impact in the midfield. I'm going to go for Richmond.
I'll go the Tigers as well, and I'm interested to see how Maddie Shevlin gets on with the Tigers as well. How she'll be able to mesh into that squad as well. I think Richmond over St. Kilda here.
I'm with you. We'll make it a trio. I like Richmond. I think they've got just a little bit too much. I'm kind of worried that they both have lost this young superstar. So it'll be as who can replace that young superstar. I just think Richmond's got a little bit more depth, and also I think Richmond wins this one. North Adelaide v Geelong.
Yeah, this one going North easily over the Cats. Even though Nina Morrison looks back in great form, I just don't think they've got enough depth from what it'll be interesting to see. I don't know the Geelong list as well, but I just feel like that North will be more experienced across the board.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this will be a good learning experience for Geelong. I think they're still a pretty youthful list, but I think it'll be a nice little learning experience for them. I do think that North is far superior. I think they're going to get the job done here fairly easily.
North purely on the list, but I'm very fascinated to see the young Prasparkas. Does she play, and how is her impact on this game? Because if she has a good game and Geelong stays in this one, I think it gives the Cats a lot of confidence as this season goes on, and I think will be best. If this gets out of hand early, it could be ugly, and unfortunately, it can happen with the talent and the stars that North has. But I don't know. Geelong's going to be pesky this year. I think they're going to be a team that's going to nip. They're going to nip somebody just once, surprising somebody, because they've got some talent. So we will definitely have to see on that. I'm going to go North as well, but I think it's a little closer than some think. A very fascinating matchup at the Whitten Oval as the Bulldogs take on the D's.
Yeah, this is going to be a ripper. I think this is my other match of the round, other than the grand final rematch. I think it's going to be a really close game. I'm going to go Melbourne, just on the experience of their list.
I'm going to go the Dogs. I'm feeling Ellie Blackburn is going to have a really good game to start off. She always hits the ground running. I think, like you said, this is going to be a really good game. I think this is going to be a high intensity, back and forth, lead change filled match. I think the Dogs are just going to pip the D's at the end here.
I like that call on that one. I'm going to tip the D's, but I think the Doggies, and I agree, it's Ellie Blackburn. She comes to play in the big games. She is an impact player. Those two forwards that they have up front are absolutely almost impossible to stop when they get going. So I think the Doggies stay in this. I just think the D's have a little bit too much. I think the ruck battle might affect this game a lot. And I'm a lot more confident in the Melbourne ruck than I am the Western Bulldog ruck stocks here. So I'm going to go D's, but I agree with you. This could be match of the round. This one is going to be an absolute cracking game of footy. Cannot wait for that one. As Brad kind of alluded to, because of the WA government and a few other things, we will have a Western Derby to start off the season as Freo host the West Coast Eagles.
Yeah, look, the West Coast Eagles are big improvers, definitely, in their practice match. They did really well, but I'm going to go Freo. I just think, you've got Houghton up forward, you've got Kiara Bowers winning the ball in the midfield. They've got an amazing midfield, solid across the back. I think they're just too experienced for the Eagles. Yeah,
I'm with you there. Dockers for me, I think closer than people think, kind of like what you were saying, that the Eagles looked much improved over the practice match. I do think that Freo with Kiara Bowers running in the middle, I think they're just going to be a little bit too much. I think West Coast is going to keep it close for a while, but I think Freo is going to pull away a little bit toward the end.
First game of the year, I think will be a little bit closer. You're going to have some nerves. You're going to have some errors. You're going to have a few things. I think this one's a little bit closer. I agree. I think Freo wins this one. I don't think it's a big blowout. I think it's a little bit like last year. It's a little bit closer game, depending on the weather. Again, if it becomes wet, then it's a much more even game. If it's a dry game, Freo's speed up front is absolutely lethal. They're so difficult to stop. I think they can put the points on the board there. And as Tracy said, it's hard to argue this has to be one of the games of the round. And that is Adelaide versus the Brisbane Lions in a grand final rematch. Do the Crows get payback, or does Brizzy start off their defense with a big win?
Yeah, look, Brisbane's defense line is one of the best, if not the best, in the game. Amazing attack off halfback. So I think that always holds them in good stead. But the two factors to consider are the return of Chelsea Randall and that Aaron Phillips was playing with a sore knee in that grand final. So if those two get going, there's a lot of experience and a lot of skill there. My heart says Lions because they're my team, but actually I think that the Crows will come out, and I reckon they'll give it a good crack. So I'm going to go the Crows.
Yeah, I'm going to go the Crows too. I showed them love in my prediction of them winning the flag this year. I think they're going to get off to a good start. I don't think this is going to derail Brisbane's season by any means. I think they're going to be there all the way toward the end. I think they're going to be a very tough team to beat in this competition. But I think it's just a clash of Titan versus Titan of this competition. I mean, it's going to be a really tough game for both sides. I think the home match is going to help favor Adelaide a little bit here. I'm going to go the Crows in a very tight and very thrilling game.
Yeah, the Crows are such a good team. Again, there's so much experience on this team, so much talent. I agree with you, Brad. I don't think this derails Brisbane's season, but I think the margin could be interesting to keep an eye on. Does Adelaide try to put up a big number to get themselves in a nice percentage boost? Again, as I said, I think this is going to be a tight ladder to get into the finals. So I think the Crows will I think the Crows will win this one, but I want to can Brisbane keep it close? They really need to keep it close, keep the confidence. Again, I think they're going to be blooding in some young players. They're talented. They're going to stay in this game. But the Crows, there's just so many weapons on that team. Can they run up the score and put a nice little percentage point after the first round? So I have the Crows winning that one. The old rivals, even in AFLW, Carlton v. Collingwood.
Yeah, look, I'm going Collingwood all the way. I actually think Carlton, I'm really interested to see how Carlton play. I feel like their team is quite small. I feel like they lost Taylor Harris, they lost the Hoskins sisters, they lost a couple to GWS. Despite having Prasparkas in the middle, I just feel like I'll be really interested to see how Carlton play. Doesn't fill me with confidence, put it that way. So I think Collingwood will win this easily.
Yeah, I'm going to go Collingwood here. It seems like these games between the Pies and the Blues are always really tough, especially at AFLW level. I mean, we've had a couple of really good matchups between these two teams in the past. I think that Collingwood gets the job done here. I think that midfield is just a little bit too overpowering with Davey and Chiocci and Benicci and all those. And how they get Frederick going in the first game is going to be very interesting, and how Ruby Schleicher can get going off of Hatback as well to see if she can get up going into that attack and being able to lock down in defense like she always does. So I'm going to go Collingwood here.
Yeah, I'm for some weird reason, this game always produces sometimes an upset. So there's part of me that's thinking Carlton. I think Collingwood wins this. They just have a tiny bit too much for Carlton in so many areas. But this is always a game that somehow breeds us upsets. Collingwood finding a way to beat Carlton in a couple of seasons where Carlton was definitely the better squad. So keep an eye on it. That was normally the first game of the year. So this being a little bit later on in the round, again, all things considering, may change the result a tiny bit, a little bit on this. I think Collingwood, but I think this Carlton is pesky. I keep an eye on this one. And then the last one, a very interesting one between the Gold Coast Suns and the GWS Giants.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I don't think that the Giants list also doesn't fill me with confidence. And of course, the Suns have the number 1 pick, Charlie Rowbottom, making her debut. But interestingly, for your USA listeners, this is held in Mackay. Mackay is around about 10 hours north of Brisbane, on the way up to the Great Barrier Reef. It's going to be hot. So that could slightly favour the Suns, who'd be used to training in those much more humid conditions. I kind of want the Suns to win, but I think the Giants will potentially have a little. No, I'm going to go the Suns.
There we go.
I love it.
There we go.
Calling the upset.
I'm on the Suns as well. I'm going to go with the Suns as well. I think they're going to be they're going to look to play loose, right? They're going to really look to try and get things going and try to kind of just get things out and going right away. I don't think that Charlie Rowbottom is going to have like the greatest debut of all time or anything. I don't think we're going to be looking like a 30 disposal match out of her, but I think that she's going to do fairly well. I think that she's got enough talent to be able to influence the game in some way. We'll have to see how things go. But yeah, these are two teams that are kind of looking to kind of find their identity a little bit. They're trying to really get themselves established at this level. I'm going to go with Gold Coast.
I'm going with you. I thought I was going to be crazy to go Gold Coast because I think the additions of Charlie Rowbottom, the younger of the Levi sisters, again, I don't know who's going to be on there, but I like the talent that Gold Coast has in there. I think their ruck is a young, talented Bella. I think was her name. She just kept getting better as the season went on. So I think that's really going to cause GWS some issues. The one thing that makes me a little iffy is you do have the ageless wonder of Cora Staunton up there, who is just an absolute goal machine. She's back for another season. You've also got Alicia Eva in the middle for GWS, who is an absolute ball magnet. She finds the ball wherever it goes, and it somehow finds its way into her hands where she can dispose of it. So it's not going to be an easy one. I agree with you, Tracy. I think the weather, is going to help Gold Coast in this game. And I think the youth, is really going to help as well, especially being earlier in the year with a little bit of a warmer temperature. So I'm going to go Gold Coast. This could be a sneaky good game. I think this is going to be a sneaky one. I think this is going to be one. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised.
It's always the ones that you don't expect, right? It's the ones you don't expect.
Well, and it's the ones everybody aren't pointing to. I mean, everybody could point to the grand final rematch in your match between the Western Bulldogs matchup. But this one, they're in the same similar part of the ladder. I think this is going to be a really, really good game. And I think Gold Coast drafted well. Charlie Rowbottom going up there is a coup almost for the Suns, getting a elite player from the Melbourne area to come up to the Gold Coast Suns and be that number 1 overall pick. She's instantly going to make an impact. You have the younger Levi sister, who's just a bull. She tackles really strong. I think she gets a debut in this one. I think both those two come in and have a nice impact in this game. Whether it's a game-changing impact, I don't know. We'll see. They can, but we'll definitely have to see. So this is one of those I notched a little bit going, I think that could be a good game. That the last game of the round, as long as everything goes the way it should, that could be a surprisingly entertaining game to end round 1. And I'm so excited for it. I am just abuzz with this. Footy has been gone. And again, over here, it's cold. It's wintry. It's not, unfortunate. I said, the one thing for you Aussies, it's your summer. You can get out, you can have a little fun. This comes perfectly for us over here in the States, because this gives us a chance to watch footy when it is cold, when it is not so good to be outside. We can sit down,
keep the fire burning.
Exactly. Pull up your iPads, throw it onto the TV, and just watch footy in January. This is so exciting. I hope every game goes off normal. Tracy, thank you again for joining us from Sydney. It's been so awesome having you on. And I just want to say personally, I don't know if Brad has listened to, I've listened to the Coat Hanger podcast. I think you ladies are doing a fantastic job. Please relay to all the ladies there. Keep up the great work. Even if I'm the only one listening, you have somebody that will listen to every podcast. I think you ladies are doing an awesome job. Keep up the great work. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Donnie and Brad, and thank you for having me on the show. It's been a real pleasure. And like you, can't wait for Friday, for the weekend, for a lot of footy games. I think it's going to be rainy here, so that'll be good. I might want to go to the beach.
Awesome. Brad, and normally in our normal podcast, we have a crazy stat of the week, but I don't really want to go into that again. How excited are you, Brad? Again, AFLW season, we don't have our Swans, but a very entertaining slate set as long as everything goes through.
Yeah, definitely very entertaining. And for anybody that really loves the game and is always looking to get a better game IQ and to get a better knowledge of the game, it's always great to be able to watch. You end up finding new favorite players, different teams that you might not have supported. Now you get to kind of get on a new team or whatever. So it's always fun to watch, and it really starts off the year-long footy express, as you will, AFLW into AFL men, and then for us in the States into USAFL coming in April and May. So the journey starts now, and I'm really excited to get it underway.
Cannot wait. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode in both Coach Hess's Sports Corner and Donnie's Disposals. I'm kind of double dipping here, but it's a way to get things done a lot quicker. So thank you again to both of my co-hosts, and we will be back again next week.